and hand over to Nick.
Thanks very much, Heather, and thank you very much for helping sponsor this event, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. For you who have joined us with the previous sessions, we're going to be running the same sort of format, and please do get in contact with us if we can be of any assistance afterwards too. Slightly different order today, in that I was quite keen to have a little bit more of discussion about the work that we're doing. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the work that we do with the Global Equality Collective, and then it can be our brilliant panel that we have today. So as said, my name is Nick Ponsford, and I am the co-founder and CEO of education for the Global Equality Collective. The GEC was set up basically inspired by an idea. So I started teaching back in 2001. I became a head of department and an AST in new technologies, and I worked mainly in schools in deprived areas with particularly low Key Stage 2 results coming in. And I taught GCSEs, A-levels and created BTECs. And during the course of that work, I obviously did a lot of work around inclusion, not just working directly with the students and looking at their career paths, but also in terms of teacher training, leadership, and eventually whole school kind of flips round to be more child-centred and led. After doing that for about 10 years, I then had my oldest child who had needs, and I had to come out of the classroom because flexible working wasn't on offer, and did a multitude of kind of digital roles around education. So the two to note really are through LinkedIn, which kind of social media hit education around 2010, and via LinkedIn, the short version is I met someone and ended up writing Techno Teachers, which Harvard published, called Techno Teaching, which taught me how I firstly could still continue to be productive, even being a working parent, and also the power of collaborating using technology. I still haven't met Dr. Julie M. Wood, who I co-authored the book with. I then started to work with an educational charity called Achievement for All. And if you know of Achievement for All, they basically work with the lowest 20% attaining students, and they work with early years through to post 16. And I started as a coach on the south of England and ended up writing the training materials, not just for the educators in the schools, but also for the coaches themselves. And it was at this point there was a programme called No More Boys and Girls out with Graham Andre, who is still a primary school teacher on the Isle of Wight. The documentary focused on gender equality in schools and used Graham as a guinea pig, looking at his use of language, looking at the use of colour in the classroom. I think they had pink toilets, for example, and then interspersing elements of research. So with that coming out, Graham then created a Twitter group, and he put myself in it and someone called Kat Wildman in it. Kat was digital product director at The Telegraph. Her and I shared a passion and also a little bit of frustration. So within the group, amazing people, but there was a real sense of lots of facts and statistics and the idea that no one was going to come and fix this. And that frustrated me. As a school leader, I am, and I still actually move the chairs around, and Kat and I felt that something needed to be done. The same issues that we have in leadership and education have been happening in business. And so what we decided to do is come up with an idea to help make a change, basically. And that's what we've done. So we do this in different ways. Kat leads on business and I lead on education, and we both support our Raising Rebels, our parent avenue. And the Global Equality Collective, we go beyond the Equality Act. So what we recognised when we started to look into the landscape, when you look at one element like gender pay gap, for example, or an ethnicity pay gap, actually there's lots of other elements that feed into it. Likewise with flexible working, you can have also issues around parenting, but likewise menopause or parental concerns, looking after dependents, ill health. All of those different things can kind of come into it. So what we realised really early on is that actually this is all part of a kind of one problem, and we need to really dissect all the little bits to find those solutions. And we were really keen to create a cradle through to retirement idea. And the reason we work with businesses, education and homes is so we have that that pathway cutting through it all. And what we're able to do in a very unique position in the GEC is really learn from our collective who cross those different sectors. And so that's what we do. We bring that kind of collective intelligence and diversity together to learn with and from one another. And we recognised right at the start how hard this was. When we started doing this in 2018, not only was the Gender Pay Gap Initiative out there, but also Me Too was happening. And what was occurring that I saw very much in education were there were a lot of groups which were coming up to try and support getting girls into technology. And actually so much it was overwhelming. It was hard to know where to go. It was hard to know what quality you were going to get. And actually there was no sort of QAing of what was happening. So that was quite hard. The other thing I realised is that schools were paying a lot of money for expensive consultants to come in. And that wasn't really changing the dial. And I didn't think that was fair for schools, because if you can't afford anything, you weren't getting these opportunities, which kind of goes against the whole model of what we wanted to do. We also recognised that people want to ask questions. So very much as we use our smart devices and Google, we want to ask those questions and we want the answers, and we want it to be immediate, we want it to make sense, and we want it to be accessible. And that's what we've built the GEC on. And I like to call it the Plunk Model. So what we do is we take the issues around decolonising a curriculum, or looking at disability and anti-ableism, flexible working, as I've said, inclusive schools, sustainable schools as well. And we look at all the straws and marbles that make it an issue in our schools. And then we go to our collective to ask for help and inspiration, and then put it back together in a way that the solutions are there for all the gaps that you have. And really what I'm trying to do, I suppose, is move and flip this idea of an iceberg when it comes to the unconscious bias that we have. With the GEC, what we try to do is unpick the privilege that people might have, understand where the blind spots are that we have, and how we can move forward to open up opportunities for all. So when I do a lot of these talks, when we start off, it's very much people look at the bias that we have when it comes to the top level of appearances. But actually underneath, we've got all these other elements that make up our own lived experience. And so what we've got with the GEC is a way of working out how we dissect that. So the first thing we've got is our online community. The next thing we've got our collective. I'm going to introduce you to a few of them in a moment. And then we've got our GEC app, which contains all of our knowledge and is a way to dissect how your workforce feel about these things. I'm not going to talk too much about the app today. So there is more information on the website, and there's also now a 30-minute demo that I've done if you want to see more of my face, which can talk you through all the elements too. So part of what we're trying to look at with the GEC is those biases and those shortcuts that we have in our thinking processes, and trying to ensure that people are aware of how they're thinking and how that impacts on their decision making. And I believe in education, this is more important than most leadership jobs. The decisions we make every day help determine how inclusive our schools are, how inclusive our classrooms are, and how inclusive our communities are for our parents and guardians too. So it's really important that our thoughts and our decisions are inclusive. And one of the issues we've got in education as well, things aren't always as they seem. We do still work with those stereotypes. We do still have those biases. And if left unchecked, that can create horrible outcomes. Students that feel discriminated, victimised, teachers that feel the same way. And so what we're about is trying to smash those stereotypes. In fact, our hashtag is smashing stereotypes. So we can start to, again, from scratch and really understand individuals' point of view. And with that point of view, the issues that we seem to have are people will have their own lived experience and kind of work in their own bubbles. There's not always that kind of cross-section of understanding how other people feel. So we're really big believers in sharing in lived experiences, from learning from indirect lived experiences and from observed lived experiences. And our collective do that in many ways. Some of them will talk about their own stories, which is what we'll have today. And some of them will talk about the solutions that they've put in for others based on their experience of working with others in education. So for GC, at the moment, we've got over 15,000 across our 3 different areas. So there's lots of ways that you can talk with us. And our communities are really super engaged. So when we ask for the best books, that's exactly what we've got. So we've got the UK's largest collection of books, all there, all for free. So great for your student reading this, great for your staff CPD as well. We've got our kids site, because it's normally old fogies like me talking about EDI. That's called Smashing Stereotypes. So we've got examples of kids smashing their own stereotypes on there. But our real crown, I think, is our collective. And we've now got over 400 subject matter experts across schools, businesses and homes. Okay, so solutions time. The GC app is a way of really, for an individual setting or a trust, to look at their own data information and to educate them in their own ways to break their own new ground when it comes to inclusion and sustainability. So just before I go, I am going to show you a 1-minute video, and then I'm going to introduce you to some of the GC collective. So I would like to introduce you to Hayley, Joanne and Harmy that own our collective, and they're going to share what they're doing at the moment, and then we'll have a little talk about how we can create more inclusive schools. If you do have questions, please put them into the chat as we're going along, and then we can come back to those at the end. So Hayley, would you like to put your camera on and join us? Thank you. Hello.
Hello. Should be.
How are you doing?
Now. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So do you want to introduce yourself, Hayley, and just very quickly talk about the work you're doing, and then we'll go into the video if you like.
Yeah, no problem at all. So my name is Hayley Wood-Thompson. I'm a PE teacher. I've been a teacher for 10 years now. I've worked at the same school for those 10 years as well. And now the deputy head of sixth form. This year, in February, when we're actually in lockdown, for LGBTQ History Month, I decided that I really wanted to do something to make a difference. I've never hidden my sexuality because I'm a member of the LGBTQ community myself. It's never been something that I've hidden. However, I was definitely not confident enough to make it public knowledge on sort of the school's social media, and it ended up going out as a virtual assembly for all of our students to watch in their virtual form time, and also sent to parents as well. Reason I decided to do this is because I guess I had the confidence finally to try and step up and do something. We've got a number of students in our school that really struggle with their sexuality in a number of different areas, and it's becoming sort of more and more and more and more. And I felt that actually, if they knew that there was somebody else in the school who they could probably talk to, who was brave enough to talk to the whole school community about it, then that person should probably be me. So I made this assembly with the help of my partner, who's actually works at the BBC, which is why it's quite a good production, better than our normal virtual assemblies. And we put it out to the school community, and it was pretty scary for that to go out. But actually, the feedback we received, certainly on the Facebook, where all the parents watched it and commented, I was really nervous about how it was going to be perceived, and the feedback that we got was absolutely incredible, and I was really proud that I was able to make a difference. And a lot of the students that I spoke to since, who obviously are struggling themselves, have come and spoke to me about it and said that what a difference it made. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that for our students, because I have worked there a long time and I'm a really known face, and I think it's helped change attitudes a little bit in the school, because we were struggling with students using a lot of derogatory terms, and they were having to be challenged all the time, and I don't necessarily think that they were being challenged by every member of staff. Okay. They would obviously be picked up by certain members of staff that would challenge it. So I just thought, look, I'm gonna put this out there and actually try and address the language that's been used in the school, sort of in a public forum. So that's what we did, and it was a really successful move. Do you want me to talk about the rest of the things we're doing before you play it?
Yeah. That sounds good. So shall I show some of the images that you sent?
Yeah,
go for it. You talk over them. That's fine.
All right, fine. So obviously, since the assembly went out, there's a couple of members of staff at the school that are really behind this big movement, including our head teacher, who is, as a school, we've just signed up to Nick's GEC, so we're now a collective school, which is an exciting move for me, because during my 10 years at the school, it has really changed in terms of attitudes towards this. We've been a Stonewall school for the last few years. But before that, early on in my teaching career, we just didn't talk about diversity and inclusion. We have a very, I would say, our school is probably 80% white students, and I don't think it probably was a particularly safe place for all the students in there, and we needed to make a difference. Luckily, you know, we're really hot on making this change, and our head teacher Jeremy is really behind sort of stepping up and doing everything that we possibly can to make this a safe and inclusive space for absolutely everyone. So what you can see on the screen there is big posters, as it were, that are sort of display boards in the corridors of our main school building. So we've got a number of school buildings. We're sort of spread out. Our campus is spread out. We have a building for humanities, a building for maths and English, etc. And we've got these display boards sort of on the stairways or in the corridors of all of those main buildings. And they've got various different messages on them. Another member of staff, Sarah, she designed these, and then we sort of made them come to life. She's probably the real champion, because she championed inclusion and equality and diversity before I sort of even got involved with my assembly. So she needs to get full credit for that. They're really lovely designs. They're really bright, really bold. And I just think it's a clear message that we do not accept any prejudice or discrimination or bullying. And it's there for everyone to see every single day, and it's sort of in their face. You know, it's not the kind of thing that is going to stamp all negative behaviour out, but I think it really is a clear message about what we want to achieve and where we are with it. So they came into place in September, and it was a really nice surprise, so I didn't actually know they were going up. So on the first day of term, when I returned and I saw them, obviously they're really quite bold on our plain white walls in the corridors, so it was a nice thing to see. Since this has happened, our school has also created like an LGBTQ support email address. So we have an email address now that students can email if they need any support. So we've called it rainbow@John Warner. And if they need somebody to talk to, or they just want some advice or anything like that, they can email that email address. And obviously it comes through to the members of staff that are sort of in this team to deal with things like that. So that's been really good. We've had a couple of emails. I wouldn't say we've been flooded, but the number of conversations that it's kind of generated off the back of it, of having someone to talk to, has been really positive. So yeah, that's probably about it really. The only other thing that we are doing with the Stonewall, as a Stonewall school, is a couple of member staff are being trained on a course called Supporting LGBTQ Children and Young People, which you get a couple of seats. Once you're a Stonewall school, you can train a certain number of people each year, depending on sort of the level that you are involved. Which obviously, the more members of staff that we can get trained on that, the more support we're going to have available. So we really are trying, but we are new-ish to all of this. So.
No, that's brilliant, Hayley. And I think what's really important from what you're saying, it's having a head teacher that's really on board with it. So it helps you as a member of staff and how you feel it there. Also being able to make policies and produce things very quickly in a school, because I think some schools really struggle with that their passion might be there, but there's a lot of red tape to make those changes. So I think the fact that not only did you get these, but you didn't know it was a nice surprise for you, illustrates the way that the school ethos, and just, you know, nice visual ways to show that you're inclusive. But I think that email is something kind of behind the scenes as well, whereas we do see when it comes to inclusive schools, a lot of people will chuck up posters, and that kind of, you know, looks nice as you walk around, but to actually have those systems in place where students can feel really safe and kind of welcomed and have those uncomfortable discussions are really how schools become inclusive, aren't they?
I think it's just gradual steps. You know, 10 years ago when I started at the school, there was nothing, not even a Stonewall poster. And I didn't feel particularly confident to be able to, you know, say about my sexuality, just in case it was perceived in a negative light. And, you know, how the students might perceive it, how the staff might perceive it. So it was kind of just a secret and kept within my close circle. But as the attitude at the school has changed, and we've been trying to implement as many little things as possible, gradually you kind of feel that shift happen, and I really do feel like the shift has happened. We've got gender neutral toilets, for example. For the PE changing rooms, we have inclusive safe space changing. So if there's any students who don't want to get changed in the male or the female changing rooms, they can go to those separate cubicles and change. And that's been really successful, especially for our students that are gender neutral or are sort of going down the route of trans. It's been really helpful for them to feel a little bit safer.
Yeah, and I think those options are really helpful. So thank you, Hayley. What I'll do is I'll show the video, which is
perfect,
fantastic, and I think that really opened up the discussions in the school. And then it sounds good to then get in Joanne next, and then we'll come back to you at the end, Hayley. So if you've got any questions about what Hayley said or is doing, how you would like to make that work, please pop it in the chat, and then we can always come back to it. So thanks very much, Hayley. I'm going to press play.
Thank you.
No worries.
My name is Hayley Wood-Thompson. I'm 32 years old. I'm a PE teacher, and I've been openly gay since the age of 18. So much has changed in the last 32 years of my life. The year I was born, in 1988, there was a law passed by the government called Section 28, which made it illegal for schools to teach or educate or use any literature promoting healthy same-sex relationships, which is obviously quite disgusting. And that went on until 2003, which is when I was actually in year 9 in school. It wasn't until 1992 that being gay was delisted as a mental illness. It was only in the year 2002 that gay people were actually allowed to adopt children. Before the year 2000, you could actually be kicked out of the army for being gay. We couldn't even get married until 2014. It makes me feel quite sad, because my life would have been incredibly different if I'd been born earlier. Despite everything that's changed in my lifetime, it is still illegal to be gay in so many countries around the world. I actually have to check before I go on holiday of what the situation is in that country surrounding gay laws. Like, I need to know whether or not it's acceptable for me to go on holiday and hold my girlfriend's hand. Am I going to get in trouble, or am I going to get arrested? And that's something I always have to look up, which is crazy in 2021. I've been quite lucky in my lifetime. I haven't really suffered too much abuse. I have had homophobic slurs, certainly on the football pitch. I had one before where the bloke just took dislike to me standing on the platform with my partner at the time, and
we were abused. I would say that the world is a completely different place to the world that I lived in when I was at school. Coming out of school for me wasn't really an option, but now everyone is a lot more accepting. Our school in particular is a Stonewall school. You might not be gay, but does it mean that you shouldn't be part of the fight to change things? As an ally, there are so many things that you can do to help. The first one would be to watch the language that you use, and if you hear someone using that language, challenge them on it. In particular, you hear, well, "Why are you being so gay?" and things like that, and often it's not picked up. You don't understand the power of your words. So if you use any of these words as part of your banter with your friends, and it's picked up or heard by people who might find that offensive, you don't know who you're actually hurting, and you could be hurting someone that you don't even mean to hurt. Nobody should, be discriminated against for who they are, and if you love someone as your friend, being an ally means that you look out for them. LGBT History Month is so important because we must celebrate those that came before us, that created the world that we live in now, for being brave, and for being open, and for being honest about who they were. Alan Turing cut the war short by a good couple of years, and he saved millions of lives. When they found out that Alan Turing was a homosexual, they chemically castrated him, and he ended up taking his own life. He was never recognised for the work that he did as a gay man until recently. I personally would encourage you to be who you are and don't hide it, but if you feel that you're in a place you can't do that, then there's lots of different organisations that you can talk to support, which weren't around when I was at school. I would say don't hide who you are.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant stuff. Thank you, Hayley. So, going to now turn to Joanne. Joanne, would you be happy to join me now? Joanne? Hello.
Now I've got to switch my camera on.
Yes, thank you. Joanne is not only in the GC Collective, she's on our advisory board. She helps Kat and I navigate what we're doing and is an incredible supporter of our work. Joanne, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, hi everybody. So my name's Joanne Monk. As you'll see from my name on the screen, I have an OBE which was awarded to me in the 2021 New Year's Honours List for services to transgender equality. I'm sorry, I feel really sad about this because I haven't got any slides or films to show. What I usually do is I share lived experience. I share lived experience to raise awareness, particularly for the issues faced by the transgender community, but also tackle other things that include LGBTQI+ as well. Obviously, I'm involved as an advisor and consultant for the Global Equality Collective. I am an ambassador for an international recruitment organisation. I am an ambassador for the Miranda Braun Diversity and Leadership Foundation. I do a considerable amount of advisory work to Sussex Police, particularly around busting the myths and stigmas around the transgender community and how they can improve their communication with the diverse communities that live within our society. And I do considerable amount with the Crown Prosecution Service South East as well, all based around hate crime. I do have a gardening business which takes up most of my daytime work, but I'm also starting something early next year. I'm a director of global education and diversity, equality and inclusion for a new domestic abuse foundation called Believe, globally CIC, the Believe Foundation. And we're going to be totally inclusive instead of, you know, in many instances, domestic abuse support organisations will give advice and support to women and girls. But of course, domestic abuse can happen to anybody. So we are totally inclusive. So we'll be covering every diverse community. So it'll be women, men, children, age, race, ethnicity, LGBT, disability, the whole lot, because it can happen to anybody. I think it's very appropriate at the moment to have this session today, because we're in the middle of International Trans Awareness Week 2021. And on Saturday is Transgender Day of Remembrance. And we use that day to think about and give our support to the families and friends of the 375 people that have been killed in the last year for living their lives authentically. And I think that's the important message. And some of the work that I do involves giving talks. I've given talks in schools, I've done podcasts, I've done a film for the GEC on my life. But one of the key messages that I try and put across is that whenever fear knocks on your door, always have the right courage to open the door, because success is waiting for you behind the fear. So, and that is very appropriate for gender identity. I knew that I was born in the wrong body when I was about 5, but it took me 58 years to accept my destiny. And one of the big things was that I was bullied constantly in school. So education is absolutely paramount, not only in schools, but in workplace, in the workplace, in organisations, and it must start from the top down. It's important for I suppose, people to understand what particularly the transgender community go through, the difficulties that they have, the mental health issues. They need to feel comfortable in themselves, and that starts at school. And looking at things like unconscious bias and microaggressions, if schools can take that on board, say, well, look, we need certainly the teaching staff, the support staff all need to know what unconscious bias is, and then have a system in place where they can support members of the trans community that are in the school, who often find it very difficult to come out. And has already been mentioned by our previous speaker, gender neutral toilet facilities are so important for somebody to feel comfortable with. I encourage everybody in the diverse community that we live in to have no fear, to be who you want to be. And one of the things that I say in my talk, and I have a big PowerPoint presentation, which I would have loved to have put on today, but it would have taken me about 40 minutes to get through it. And I don't want to bore you with that, but I've got the presentation in front of me, and there's just a couple of slides that I use. And one of them is, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. and many people can relate to that in the LGBT community. So don't wait, get on with your life, because happiness, and this is where the original statement I said about whenever fear knocks on your door, success is waiting for you and you can be really happy. And in relation to the transgender community, another slide that I use is when you find yourself cocooned in isolation and cannot find your way out of the darkness, remember that this is similar to the place where caterpillars go to grow their wings. And that's so true of what happens to us. And the presence of allies in any community, of course, is very, very important as well. Allies who are usually cisgender males or females that understand and give that support. They are aware of the issues faced by the transgender, the LGBT community. They are able to give support, and they're able to shout out to their friends and colleagues that there's nothing wrong with being who you want to be. I just want to end up on, because I don't want to rattle on, because I'm very conscious of the time. When I start my talks about my lived experience, I want to share this because I think it gives you a very vivid picture of what life being born into the wrong body is like. And that is when David, which was my previous name, was born, an imaginary tree was planted. And over the years, that tree would grow, and its trunk and its branches would shape David's characteristics, his strengths, his personality, but the roots were never his. They belonged to Joanne. And for 58 years, she would flood him with her thoughts and her emotions and her desires until he released her from the body that she was trapped in. And that is what it's like. So my strong message, and the message that I put out everywhere, is follow your rainbow, because at the end of it, you may not find a pot of gold, but what you will find is sackfuls of happiness. There you go.
Wow. Thank you, Joanne. You're such a legend. Thank you. I mean, how inspirational, both of you. And I will say that in the recent crowdfund that we did, we were able to fund our new GC library. And very soon we will be releasing our GC Presents, our masterclasses with incredible people like Joanne. So you'll be able to hear her story. And to help everyone be more inclusive. So Joanne, thank you so much. I'm going to go across to Harmeet just because I'm aware of time, and hopefully we'll have a bit of time to come back to you, and if not, we will be doing more work with Joanne in the future. So just watch our social media and look at Joanne as well. So thank you, Joanne, so much. Harmeet, hello.
Hi, I'm just going to share my screen. Really inspiring to hear Joanne and Hayley. Some really inspiring stories there. So I've got, not coming from a very different angle here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. So over to you, Harmeet. Do you want to say about the work that you're doing in education when it comes to being inclusive?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So my name's Harmeet Sahota. Up until the summer, I was a senior assistant head teacher for 11 years in a school in northwest London. I started there as an NQT. So it's quite a change for me. And I now work as an EdTech and leadership consultant, supporting schools with digital strategies. Earlier in the year, I had the pleasure of working with both Nick and Heather as an EdTech demo regional lead. So currently I have a range of roles. I'm an EdTech advisor, BET judge, NASBET computing consultant, but my drive and passion is curriculum wide, where we focus on creating a curriculum that is fit for purpose for every child. So I'm here to talk to you about how to make your curriculum more inclusive with a focus on NEETs and students at risk of exclusion. So here's some interesting statistics. Between 2017 and 2019, there was a 20% increase in the number of NEETs. In terms of fixed term exclusions between 2014 and 2018-19, there was an 83% rise in exclusions. And then during the same period, in terms of permanent exclusions, there was a 65% increase. Now, those stats are quite shocking. And you have to ask the question, what is the reason for these statistics rising? Is it a case that schools have become stricter? Is behaviour deteriorating? Is it because of the introduction of the EBAC? Could it be a narrow curriculum? And these figures do lead me to believe that the curriculum plays a huge part. So where did curriculum-wide come from, which I'll come on to in a moment. I'm going to tell you about a story of a child called Charlie. In 2012, I was in charge of curriculum, and I had approximately 30 pupils who struggled with accessing mainstream curriculum. And we engaged in a program which was called the YA Apprentice Program. Students got to complete about 4 to 8 hours of motor mechanics, construction and hairdressing on and off site, alongside completing 50 hours of work experience in their own time to achieve this award. All of the courses were extremely successful and had a 100% pass rate for all the participants. And it also gave these students incentives to do well in other subject areas. And this included one student called Charlie, who was at risk of permanent exclusion. At the end of this course, he came out of school and secured an apprenticeship with Ferrari. And another student actually got named Vauxhall Apprentice of the Year. And this was all a result of the motor mechanics course. So without this pathway, there wouldn't have been this success story, sense of achievement, pride and ambition. The curriculum is slowly opening up now, but in my opinion, it's far too narrow. And do we cater for the learners that are on this slide? And what can we do to ensure they don't end up being a negative statistic? And this is the driving force behind what I do. So curriculum-wide has 3 main aims. And it's to improve Progress 8 scores, support students with exam anxiety, and support the reduction of NEETs and exclusions. So it's a platform where you can search over 16,000 courses, find courses that count towards performance tables, find courses that are 100% controlled assessment. You can view pass rates and popularity of courses nationally, and you can compare courses side by side. But what I'm going to do is look at 3 different case studies where schools have used curriculum-wide to become more inclusive. So the first case study looks at suitable courses for learners. Brave head teachers are putting students first above Progress 8 scores by finding right courses for students who struggle with mainstream curriculum. So we've got schools who are delivering marine courses, journalism, horticultural courses. With the latter, a school has organised a cohort to have work experience with the school's external grounds team, which has had a really positive impact. Again, there was another student at risk of exclusion, but now looks really forward to working 2 days a week with the grounds team. And last I heard from this school, they've had students from other schools who have joined the course. And then if we look at exam anxiety, following lockdown, mental health, pre-COVID, mental health figures were 1 in 6 pupils experiences some form of mental health issue. Unfortunately, that's increased now to 1 in 8. And there are schools who recognise that students have exam anxiety. And if this is, if schools can identify this earlier enough, they can actually look to deliver courses that are 100% coursework to alleviate some of the exam pressure. Now, that there's so many courses out there, but if the school has Progress 8 pressure, there's over 50 courses that are 100% coursework. And then if you've got a student that's struggling in a particular area, you can look at what alternatives are. There's a compare feature where you can look at alternative coursework-based subjects, and this can be done across the board, whether it's art, business, geography, just to look at the content and percentage courseworks that will help those individual students and those who are struggling to access the curriculum. So in a nutshell, with these rising stats and the year that students have gone through, I think it's really important that schools provide a student-centered curriculum that is fit for purpose for every child. Thanks, Nick.
No worries. Thanks, Harmeet. Yeah, and I think what's been really interesting by having three of you, you're all doing completely different things. And when schools are thinking, how can I be inclusive? It illustrates all the different ways that you can do this. You know, some are focused on the curriculum, and I love, you know, I love what you do, Harmeet, because I know when I was teaching in school, it's exactly what I needed to build a curriculum around my students, rather trying to force them down the tunnels that we thought we could offer. It's also about making people feel really psychologically safe, like Joanne's saying, that you feel that you can be your whole self and be authentic when you come into school as well. But I think also about challenging the system, which Hayley's been able to do, and work with it in the same way. So I know that we haven't got the questions at the moment. I am going to ask the three of you just to give me one thing that you would give as a takeaway to the people listening. I would also say that Harmeet is very kindly offered GEC member schools free access to curriculum wide as well. So Hayley, you might want to take us up on that. Joanne is not only helping us with our training in the GEC library, we have got her new video, GEC Presents, talk about her story in there, that we'll be releasing that very soon. And then the work that Hayley's done, the video that you've seen, and she's given us advice about what schools can do, that's in our library as well. And we will also be working with Hayley School as a case study school, because it's hard to get the best practices out there. So we will be bringing that information together as well. So if you like what you've seen today, please get involved with what we're doing, and we'd love to take you even further on the journey. So I'm going to go around the panel now and just say, so what do you think, Hayley, what would be your kind of takeaway to the people listening? How can people be more inclusive, like tomorrow when they go in? What could they do?
Okay, well, I had a little saying that I attached to my video when it went out on Twitter last year, and I think it sticks. So I think as teachers, our job is obviously to educate and inspire our future generation. We all know from listening what we've just listened to that it's so important that people live their truth, because students can't be something that they can't see. So it's so important that, you know, there is some people that step forward and be brave enough to do that and be that person for them. So to make it the world a better place for all, sometimes we all just have to be a little bit brave. Acceptance without exception, always.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hayley, you absolute superstar.
That's all right.
Joanne, is there anything you would add about what you think the people could do tomorrow when they go into their settings to help be more inclusive?
Well, I think the main message that I want to get across is allow students in schools to live their lives authentically. And I say to the students something that I've started using a lot recently on my LinkedIn posts and one thing and another, and that's believe to achieve. So what I'm saying by that is believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, and by doing that, you will achieve success and, most importantly, happiness. But that cannot be done unless schools promote inclusivity. And let's face it, there's a lot of schools that are still lagging behind with this. 4 out of 5 transgender people suffer from hate or discrimination in schools or the workplace or at home. and they are appalling figures, absolutely appalling figures. There's big inroads being made. So let's see it go across the board. LGBT education in schools is a must, certainly from year 10 upwards. And just let the community be who they want to be. They don't want the fear, they don't want the hate, they just want to be themselves.
Absolutely, 100%. Joanne, Heather has put a question in the comments that you might like to respond to as well. And Hayley, if you've got any ideas, that would be great. Harmy, what would you add into this in terms of what can people do straight away to be more inclusive with your experience?
I think they've got to be proactive rather than reactive. You know, rather than waiting for that student to be, you know, for that discussion to come around, oh, do they need to be sent to alternative provision, or if a child's at risk of exclusion, you know, pastoral teams up and down the country, they're so good, but there isn't much done in the way of curriculum until things start to go pear-shaped. So I think it's just looking for those early signs, looking at those students, and again, just making something that's fit for purpose for the child.
Absolutely. And I think there is, I mean, we do work around the universal social design model, that in that we're trying to put in open access, not doing it as a solution after something that's happened, that all of these systems are put in place that, you know, when members of staff come to school, when students come to school, that they feel that there's no barriers to their learning. And then once they are in and learning, that they have that choice of access for those qualifications and courses that they need as well. And I loved you talking about how the school had looked at the course and then kind of considered what they could do within the school to kind of keep that going as well. And it's about those small steps, isn't it? It is an overwhelming topic when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And I think what you can do bit by bit can help you and to sort of take those chunks as well. So I think what I'm going to do is leave it there, because I don't want to have to stop anyone in mid-flow. If everyone, all the people on panel would like to put in contact details, social media contacts, websites, please go ahead. The alternative way is to get hold of us with the Global Equality Collective, and we can help you. And Heather, I'll pass back to you for the close. But thank you once again to everyone that's joined, and the time has just completely sped by. So thank you.
Yes, thank you to our panelists. What great stories we've heard, and there's some, I know Hayley's put in there her Twitter feed that you can follow up on if you want to ask her questions directly. But really, sorry, I'm sitting in the dark here. I'm really, yeah, it's really moving, and hopefully that has given those of you who've joined us some of, you know, nuggets where to start, and where, you know, who you can go and look for inspiration to get started on your journey within school, or you might be supporting groups of school within your local authority. So really hope it's been useful for you all. This session has been recorded, so for those of you who've got colleagues who couldn't make it and you want to share the discussion and maybe take it on further within your own settings, then please do that. We'll share those details with you. But all I can say is thank you very much to our panelists. Great input from all three of you. And if you've got any questions, please contact Nick, and she can forward them on to anyone who can answer your question, whether it's panelists today or maybe somebody else from the collective who specialises maybe in another area, and maybe some of the topics we've talked about over the last couple of months. So thank you again, and we'll leave you to go and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.